Welcome back, everybody, to the Seattle Sonics, my NBA franchise here on NBA 2K22. Last episode, our playoff hopes were officially killed off. The Pelicans beat us by 3 points in Game 6 to eliminate us in the first round of the postseason, which means our quest at an NBA championship is unfortunately no more. We've got a lot to go over today, including the season recap. We're going to sim through the playoffs, and we're going to do everything in the offseason up until the draft. So that includes the lottery, draft preview, all that fun stuff. So get comfortable, get your popcorn, get your drink, because we've got a lot to talk about the future of Sonics basketball. But first, we're going to talk about this past season as a whole, which was a very successful one for our Sonics. After only winning 21 games last year, we completely shocked the world, winning 47 this year, clinching the 5th seed in the Western Conference. And even though we lost in the playoffs, even though it was a bitter ending, it was still a very successful season. Let's take a look at the numbers. Now, I want to point out that Oscar J. Basile's stats are glitched for the regular season and playoffs, I'm pretty sure. I don't think he averaged 18 in the playoffs. So as you can see here, for example, he did not play 21 playoff games, so it's not like I'm being crazy. They're actually glitched. I think the rest of these stats are correct, and of course, a lot of guys really stepped up this season, really took strides, and our rookie class was very good. Obviously, Oscar J. Basile was great. So is Buzz Wigginton, our number 1 overall pick, who ended up winning Rookie of the Year and is the face of the organization. The 3 major power rankings have us finishing in 9th, which, considering we were probably dead last season, that's certainly a major step up in the right direction. Let's now simulate the rest of the postseason, see who ends up winning the NBA Finals. In the Western Conference, New Orleans has to face off against Memphis, and the Nuggets play the Kings. And then the East is just a hot mess, with all of the 4 highest seeds losing in the first round. The Grizzlies beat the Pelicans in 7, Denver beat Sacramento, and then the Nets and Pistons faced off in the East Finals, and as you can see, Memphis beats Denver in 5, and the Pistons sweep the Brooklyn Nets. Who could have seen that coming? So it's pretty much David and Goliath in the finals. For the West, we had the Memphis Grizzlies, who are the number 1 seed. They have the best record in the NBA and are the heavy favorites, but they are a little bit banged up with Victor Oladipo and Norman Powell nursing injuries. The Pistons are, of course, led by second-year guard Cade Cunningham, and after barely squeaking into the play-in tournament, they have made it all the way to the NBA Finals. This Pistons team isn't all that different than in real life, other than the addition of a few pieces such as Malcolm Brogdon, so it's a major surprise that they're there, but as a Pistons fan, I don't mind. Now, unfortunately for Detroit, they are struggling early, down 2-0 against the Grizzlies, but Detroit does take home Game 3. Memphis takes home Game 4, so the Grizzlies are in the driver's seat, and sure enough, the Memphis Grizzlies would end up winning the NBA Finals in 6 games. So at just 23 years old, Ja Morant is now an NBA champion, which certainly goes a long way for his legacy as he continues to go through his career. Former Sonic Cam Payne is an NBA champion as well, so I suppose that's kind of cool. Going into the offseason now, as I said, we're going to do everything up until the NBA draft, and that starts with player retirements, and there's a long list of talent. Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry, LaMarcus Aldridge, Al Horford, Paul Millsap, and others. We even have one of our own retiring in Garrett Temple. There's also former Sonic PJ Tucker retiring as well. I don't think Temple played a single minute for us, so that's not really a big loss, but he's still a veteran piece for us, so I guess it sucks a little bit. Rick Carlisle and John Lucas retire from coaching. Chris Paul is a Hall of Famer, very well deserved, obviously. But I'm a little bit surprised no Kyle Lowry or LaMarcus Aldridge. Paul and Lowry get jerseys retired again. I think you can make an argument for LaMarcus Aldridge getting his Blazers number retired. So in the league meeting stage, I always like to add a new rule every season, but I decided not to this year because there wasn't really anything I really wanted to add. And this is the last year of the CBA, so maybe next year we add multiple new rules with the new CBA in place. So now let's go to the draft lottery. Now, we do not have any lottery picks at the moment, but it will still be interesting to see how everything unfolds. We have 2 picks in the first round, but since us and Minnesota both made the postseason, neither of those will be in the lottery. So as we start this one off, the Rockets go to pick 16. The Pacers are at pick 15. The Pacers finish with the worst record in the league, so they have another pick coming up. The Orlando Magic will finish at 14th. Up to 13 now. We've got our first movement. It's for Trailblazers. The Oklahoma City Thunder have jumped into the top 4 as if they can add any more pick ammunition. The Thunder do not jump up again as they stay at pick 12. Moving forward now, Portland, their other first-round pick as part of the Damian Lillard trade is 11. The Blazers got plenty of draft picks in that Damian Lillard move. This is just one of them, and it is going to be a lottery pick, so we'll see what they add. The Orlando Magic's other first-round pick goes to 10, so they have 10 and 14. The Charlotte Hornets will stay at 9, so other than OKC moving up, not a whole lot of drama. At pick 8, we have the Miami Heat. Again, not a ton of movement ever since OKC. Pick 7 will be headed to the Rockets, so Toronto moves into the top 4. Pick 6 will go to Golden State, who had the second worst record in the league. So by default, the NBA's worst team, the Indiana Pacers, fall all the way to 5, and the Jazz and Spirits both move into the top 4. The 4th pick will be going to the Utah Jazz as they try to add another piece to certainly sway Donovan Mitchell to want to stick around. The 3rd pick will go to the Oklahoma City Thunder, so they finished with 3 and 12 in this year's draft. So now it's down to Toronto and St. Louis. The 2nd pick will go to the Toronto Raptors, and that means the St. Louis Spirits are picking number 1 overall. It's a very weird way how things work. So last year, the Spirits defied expectations, made the playoffs, got bounced in the first round, and the Sonics got the number 1 pick. This year, the Sonics defy expectations, get bounced in the first round, and the Spirits get the number 1 pick. So that is kind of cool and should make St. Louis a lot better, which I'm pretty excited about for our expansion rivalry with them. In the staff signing stage, we didn't really do a whole lot there, just some minor movement with smaller positions. So now let's talk about the NBA draft. Now, we do not have any high picks this year yet. We could always make a move, but we currently have 22 and 25 in the first round, along with 18 in the second round. But keep in mind, we also have 3 first-round picks next year, 2 first-round picks in 2027, and our other picks those other years. We do have a few players who we can trade away on draft night. Obviously, Buzz Wigginton is untouchable, and I don't see myself trading Oscar. But maybe we flip one of our wings like Jordan Poole or Lonnie Walker, who both definitely have plenty of trade value. So let's now preview the draft. We've done prospect profiles for this draft class, so you guys probably already know these guys, but we're going to do sort of a final assessment and see how much has changed in players' draft positioning since the beginning of the season. The projected number 1 pick has changed. That now is DeMatha Catholic center Deo Omenbonigba. It would be a major surprise to see the St. Louis Spirits not pick him number 1 overall. He is the highest ceiling of anybody in this draft class, a 7'3" center with an 8'2" wingspan. He's an unbelievable shot blocker, great interior defender. He has the athleticism to switch onto the perimeter if needed, good playmaker, good scorer from all 3 levels. He is the total package, the modern NBA center, and somebody who I think the Spirits will absolutely love building their franchise around. It would be a total miss if they don't pick him at number 1. I think he's really the only choice. After him, there are 3 other blue-chip prospects in this draft class, one of whom is point guard Quentin Decolo, a native of France. Decolo at the beginning of the year was highly touted, but he really improved his draft stock and has turned himself into a legitimate candidate for the 2nd overall pick, which belongs to the Toronto Raptors. I think the Raptors would be a great fit for him. They're looking for their point guard of the future ever since Kyle Lowry left. They drafted Samuel Staples at the end of the first round last season, and while he had a nice year, I think Quentin Decolo brings them more upside. Decolo is not a great scorer, but he's an unbelievable playmaker, he's an unbelievable defender, and he's an unbelievable athlete. The way I view him is pretty much Killian Hayes, but on steroids. And I'm a big Killian Hayes guy, so that is a major compliment. The other 2 blue-chip prospects include Clemson's Kyril Story. Story had a very strong season at Clemson, averaging around 25-5, made the All-ACC first team, but many scouts question how much he contributes to winning basketball. The Clemson Tigers did not make the NCAA tournament this year, so many think that maybe Kyril Story doesn't really help winning basketball, and he just happens to be a good player. Now, personally, I think it's partly that Clemson was a bad team, and maybe Kyril Story is a selfish player. Story was inefficient this season scoring the basketball. I think his shooting grades are worse than what's shown there, but I think he has a unbelievably high ceiling. Very good defensively, phenomenal athlete, great playmaker. I think he's a really, really talented kid, and if he gets to the right team, he's going to flourish. UCLA's Jazz Jackson entered the season projected as the #1 pick, and his stock has fallen just a tiny bit. I still view him as a blue chip prospect. I still have no doubt that he will go in the top 5, but I don't think he's that true #1 pick candidate that it really looked like at the beginning of the season. Jackson is probably the best pure scorer in this draft class. He can drive to the cup. He creates his own shot from the perimeter. He has some work to do with the rest of his game, but no matter what, this is someone who's going to put the ball in the bucket at a high level, and he does have some other strong attributes. He's a pretty good playmaker, pretty good athlete, and he's not a total liability on the defensive side of the floor. So don't be surprised if those guys all go in the top 4, and maybe the Sonics trade really everything to move up for one of those top picks and add another star alongside Buzz Wigginton. From there, we enter the next tier of players, guys like Cairo Nirmane, Zaire King, Bryson Davis, and Desmond Donovan. All of them are superbly talented. I don't think the Sonics would make a move to the back end of the top 10 to get one of these guys, but maybe if one of these players falls towards the teens, Seattle may look to trade up and get one of them. One of the bigger draft risers this season has been point guard Jaime Carlos from Kansas, who we haven't really talked about this year, but his stock has soared up and he is now projected to go in the top 10. Kansas has a number of talented guards in this year's draft class. Going forward, now we start to get to the range of players who the Sonics could consider if they stay with their 2 first-round picks. Now, I don't expect Cole Wagner Jr. out of Texas Tech to fall to 22, but if he does, Seattle would be wise to pick him in a heartbeat. Wagner is built like a tank. He's a 6'4", 240-pound guard who is just jacked. He can play the 1, the 2, and the 3, and hell, I think he could even guard power forwards if he wanted to. Wagner is not a great three-point shooter, but he's a good scorer from inside the arc, good defender, good playmaker. Outside of his long-distance shooting, he is a phenomenal prospect, and I think the Sonics would really covet a player like him. Moving forward, we really get to the range of guys who could fall to 22, including Oregon's Zeppelin Edgel, who was a little bit disappointing this season. He entered the year as a projected top 10 pick, and he didn't really quite live up to those expectations, but he is still supposed to go in the first round. Another very high-level defender. That's a very common theme in this draft class. There are so many elite defensive prospects who we've talked about so far, and Edgel is another one. He's not great offensively, although he's not an awful scorer. I don't think he's ever going to average 20 a game in the NBA. He's a solid playmaker, solid athlete, but obviously the defense is what's there. He's a great perimeter defender. He can switch down low as well. He has the size and strength, I think, to handle big guys, and especially if he can bulk up, he could be really good. Darren Law was the top scoring option on a Louisville team who has numerous NBA draft prospects on their roster and ended up making the NCAA championship. Law scored 26 points and grabbed 11 rebounds in the championship despite losing to the Duke Blue Devils. But despite that, I think Darren Law has shown that he is a winner and certainly a possibility for one of the Seattle Sonics selections. Law is a really strong scorer. He can make plays down low. He can shoot the 3-ball. He's a good playmaker, and he's a good perimeter defender as well. Doesn't have many major weaknesses to his game other than maybe versatility, particularly on the defensive end of the floor, but he is really, really talented. One of the players he lost to in the national championship game was Duke's Darvarius Johnson, who ended up winning Final Four MVP, including scoring 21 in the national championship game and grabbing 6 steals. Duke's roster was absolutely loaded with 3 possible first-rounders, including point guard Fred Flame and forward Ryan Wilcox. However, I think Darvarius Johnson is the best prospect on the Duke roster. Had a disappointing freshman season, but returned for his sophomore campaign where he flourished. Won the ACC National Player of the Year. Really, really good 3-and-D guy who I think can provide more as a playmaker and an explosive athlete as well, and somebody who I think the Sonics are going to really like. Kentucky's Jose Colon took college basketball by storm. Colon was the leading scorer among every Power 5 team, which is certainly impressive. He has drawn some comparisons to the likes of Steph Curry and Trae Young when it comes to his ball handling, his long-distance shooting, and his ability to create his own shot. Cologne knows how to get to the basket. He's a very crafty player. Now, he has his weaknesses. He's a surprisingly poor mid-range and free-throw shooter, which should improve with time, but he's not a very good defender, and with his lack of size and athleticism, that certainly hurts. But Trae Young and Steph Curry are also not freak athletes and not great defenders, so I think he could figure it out and become really good. As we go forward now, a player whose draft stock has gone up and down the board throughout the year is Chance Dumas, who plays for Overtime Elite, one of the new ways to be a professional player before joining the NBA. Dumas started the year projected to go in the late first round, but then he jumped into top 10 consideration after a hot start. He really cooled off, though, and has gone back into that late first round territory. I think Dumas has a really high ceiling, though. He's not a polished scorer yet. He is a very inconsistent shooter, particularly from outside the paint, but he's a very good playmaker for his size. He's a freak athlete who is a really good and versatile defender. Despite being 6'6", he can really hang with the big guys down low, and he has the quickness and arm length to be an elite defender on the perimeter as well. Certainly a player the Sonics really like and could realistically fall to one of their first-round selections. As we go down now, it's a little bit harder to find players we really like. We would certainly love for one of the guys we talked about to possibly fall into the second round, and from there, maybe we would make a move. But I do think this class does have a lot of depth in the second round. Of the projected second rounders, I think it would be a dream scenario for the Sonics if Ohio State point guard Rashaad Butler fell to their selection. Butler is one of the youngest players in this draft class at just 18 years old, but had a really strong season at Ohio State. He is not a great jump shooter yet, but the rest of his game is very impressive. He has strong athleticism, strong defender, and I feel like that's a common theme with a lot of these prospects. Good athleticism, good defense, but needs to work as a scorer. Although it's not like Butler is an awful shooter or scorer, he's just overly inefficient. He did not take many threes last season, which was probably for the better because, well, his three-point shooting is just flat out not good. But at 18 years old, with his size and upside, I think a team like the Sonics would love to take a swing on him in the second round. If they don't get him, there are some other fine players. Jimmy Akun-Jonas out of UConn is pretty talented. They could go with one of the Villanova guards, Sean Johnson, Clayton Kunzweiler, maybe even Dukabu Chukwu-Mereji, who stands at 5'6". Wayne Kay is a 76 overall, projected to go in the 50s out of Memphis. That's interesting. I also like Fred Perry. He comes from England, a freak athlete who's a really gifted scorer. So there are plenty of talented players in the second round, even if a guy like Rashaad Butler does not fall to our second round pick, which I would assume he probably will not, unfortunately. And if he does, let's just say we're going to run that pick up. So there's our draft class preview. And again, this is a really, really fun draft class, one of the most loaded rookie classes in a while. But now we really need to narrow down who we are going to select. So we're going to go into the draft combine and into pre-draft workouts and try to narrow some decisions down. A lot of the top prospects usually don't participate in the combine. The four blue chip prospects, Omen Benigba, Quentin DeColo, Kyril Story, and Jazz Jackson, did not participate in the combine because their draft stock is already sky high. The combine doesn't really help them. It could really only hurt them. There were some projected first-rounders in here, like Kyle Cruz out of UConn, Bryson Davis out of Alabama. He's projected to go in the top 10. One of the biggest winners was Chance Dumas, who we talked about a little bit earlier. Dumas had the fastest lane agility time. He tested well in the sprint, 40-inch vertical, and shot the ball surprisingly well. He's not a great shooter, Dumas, but he was knocking him down at the combine. Maryland's Isaiah Iguodala had a strong combine. There's Darvarius Johnson continuing to improve his stock. Somebody who I think the Sonics really hope falls to one of their first-round picks, but I'm pretty sure Darvarius Johnson probably will not fall to 22. Patrick McCagnew, we didn't really talk about him earlier, but he's another guy the Sonics could consider late in the first round. He had a pretty solid combine, too. Fred Perry, late second-round projection. He had a 43-inch vertical, shot the ball really well. So maybe he's a guy the Sonics really look at with that second-round pick. And then Cole Wagner here at the bottom did not shoot the ball well, but he tested well in the athletic testing. So not a great combine for Wagner, but I do still expect him to probably go towards the back end of a lottery. We have 12 pre-draft workouts, and we have to be strategic here on which players we invite. So I decided to invite the 4 blue chip players, Mbonigba, Del Colo, Story, and Jackson. I figured maybe we want to try and move up into the top 4. I think we have the ammunition to do it, so maybe we do want one of those stars. I invited Cole Wagner. He's someone who, if he falls into the teens, we may want to make a move for him. And then guys who I think could fall to our pick: Edgel, Law, Johnson, Cologne, Bacagnu, Dumas. All of those guys ended up getting pre-draft invites from us as well. And then in the second round, I believe we invited one player, and that ended up being Fred Perry from England. Again, we didn't really talk about him earlier, but he does have some intriguing skills with his excellent jump shot and athleticism. So as we scroll down here, some notable performers include Deo Mbonigba, who tested very well. Jose Colon shot the ball unbelievably well, with a 41-inch vertical, but Quinton De Colo had a 44-inch vertical. Chance Dumas tested a little bit worse at our pre-draft workout than the combine, but that was to be expected because he completely tore up the combine. Jazz Jackson was pretty solid. Darvarius Johnson had another good showing. Both of them had 40-inch verticals. Darren Law was a little bit disappointing. Tested kind of slow in the sprint, only with a 33-inch vertical. Kyril Story tested pretty well. He shot the ball better than I expected, so that's certainly a good sign with him. And as we conclude today's episode, there's one more thing I want to do. Mock drafts. You guys know I'm a big mock draft nerd, so this should be fun for me. Starting with Draft Express, the top 3 goes about as expected, with Mbonigba, De Colo, and Story going there. The first surprise is at 4, with Kyle Cruz going to the Jazz. And then Jazz Jackson doesn't go until 6, being picked by the Golden State Warriors. Imagine the Warriors adding him. That would be really scary. This draft would really not play well in our favor with guys like Wagner, Cologne, and a lot of our other targets off the board by 22. Although Zeppelin Edgel would be a good backup plan. He's really the only guy I'd be really happy with who would be left on the board in this scenario. And then at 25, they have us selecting Isaiah Iguodala. So doubling down on wings, which, as you guys know, I like to build my teams around wings. So maybe that's not too bad of an idea, especially considering we already probably have our big man for the future and we probably have our point guard for the future. In the second round, they have us getting Wayne K, who, if you remember, is a 76 overall, so that would be excellent value. 2K, very realistic top 4, Mbonigba, De Colo, Jackson, and Story. And then there aren't really any major surprises through the rest of the top 10. I could very well see this happening. I think that really makes a lot of sense, and there aren't a ton of surprise picks here. This board plays out a lot better for us. A lot of our targets don't start to go until the later teens. At 22, they have us selecting Isaiah Iguodala, and then at 25, they have us getting Chance Dumas. I would probably pick Dumas over Iguodala, and in this scenario, I think I would probably pick Dumas at 22 and then maybe go elsewhere at 25. But I do like Isaiah Iguodala. I think he is pretty solid, but I don't know if I would use a first-round pick on him. And then in the second round, 50th overall, they have us selecting LaMarcus Jackson Jr., who, of course, was part of that loaded Louisville team who ended up making the national championship game. NBA.com clearly likes to see the world burn. They had the Spirits going Jazz Jackson at 1, and the Raptors sticking with De Colo at 2. So that means Deo Mbonigba goes at 3 to Oklahoma City. So imagine pairing the 7'3" Mbonigba and the 7'5" Boama Chukwumereji. Dear God, I hope that does not happen. Because if those two are on the same team, GG, Oklahoma City would become a dynasty with those two as their bigs. That would just be unbelievably scary. As we scroll down forward here, getting towards our picks again with a focus on wings. They have us getting Iguodala at 22, and then at 25, Gavin Ross out of Sweden. We haven't really talked about him a whole lot, but he's a pretty talented player. And then in the second round, they have us selecting LaMarcus Jackson Jr. once again. So a very common theme here. All 3 mock drafts had us using all 3 of our picks on small forwards, which is interesting. You guys know I love my wings, but I don't know if I would use all of my picks on them. Our only small forward technically on the roster is Cam Reddish, who is a free agent at the end of the year, but we still have talent along the wings in Jordan Poole and Lonnie Walker. If we don't trade those guys away during the draft, then we would be pretty good on our wing spots, assuming we bring Cam Reddish back. But that's where today's episode is going to end. Let me know what you guys think we should do in the draft. Should we stick with 22 and 25 and add 2 first-round rookies? Should we make a big move? Maybe going up to the teens or maybe even into the top 4 to get one of these elite blue-chip prospects. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode. Make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.